You raise a great point.
So I'm going to ask you, have you asked to talk to Michael Wolff?
You raise a great point. I haven't personally asked to talk to Michael Wolff.
Has the FBI asked?
But the FBI, I'll get back to you if the FBI specifically
so Michael Wolff
has
has
ever.
About 100 hours of testimony of Jeffrey Epstein. Wouldn't it be good for the FBI to interview Michael Wolff?
I'm not saying they haven't. I just don't know.
Has FBI subpoenaed the tapes that Michael Wolff has conducted of Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know.
All right. So if you could provide us an answer, that would be terrific.
Sure.
47 names. That's it. Not a list of suspects, not a list of witnesses. 47 names that the director of the FBI refuses to make public. And when Congressman Ted Lieu asked him directly, point blank, on camera, in front of the entire country, Kash Patel looked him in the eye and said something that should make every single American stop whatever they are doing and pay attention. He said, some materials will never be public. Never. Not someday, not eventually, never. So today, we're going to talk about what those 47 names are, why Patel is protecting them, and what Ted Lieu uncovered in that hearing room that Patel absolutely did not want anyone to see. Before we get into this, I want you to think about something for a second. When a government official sits in front of Congress, under oath, on national television, and tells a sitting congressman that certain information will never, ever be made available to the American public, that is not a legal answer. That is not a procedural answer. That is a warning. And the question you have to ask yourself is, who exactly is being warned? Because it is not Ted Lieu. Lieu already knew what was in those files. He was not asking because he needed the information. He was asking because he needed Patel to say it out loud. And Patel walked right into it. Here is how the hearing started. The room was already tense before Lieu even opened his mouth. This was not one of those sleepy Tuesday morning committee sessions where half the members are checking their phones and the witness looks bored. Every journalist in that room knew something was coming. Lieu had been quiet for the first 40 minutes of the hearing. He sat there, watching, taking notes, letting other members go through their standard questions. And then it was his turn. He picked up a single sheet of paper, looked at Patel, and said, "I want to ask you about a specific list." He did not say which list. He did not say where it came from. He just said, "a specific list." And you could see Patel's posture shift, just slightly, just enough. Lieu said he had obtained information about a document referred to internally as the Epstein Associated Individuals List, a compilation of 47 names flagged during the original FBI investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's network. Now, here is where this gets important. This was not a list of victims. This was not a list of investigators. This was a list of individuals who had direct, documented connections to Epstein, and who had been, according to the information Lieu had, specifically excluded from active investigative follow-up. 47 people connected to one of the most disturbing criminal networks in American history, and someone inside the Department of Justice had decided that none of them would be investigated further. Lieu asked Patel directly, "Does this list exist?" Patel paused. He looked at his notes. He looked at his team. And then he said something that confirmed everything without technically confirming anything. He said, "There are materials related to ongoing matters that I cannot discuss in an open setting." Lieu did not blink. He said, "I am not asking you to discuss the contents. I am asking you whether this list exists." Patel paused again, longer this time, and then he said, "I can confirm that there are documents related to Epstein investigations that remain classified or otherwise restricted from public disclosure." Lieu leaned forward. Restricted by whom? Patel said, "By the appropriate authorities within the executive branch." There it is, the executive branch. Not a court, not a judge, not an independent legal authority. The executive branch. The White House is deciding what Americans get to know about Jeffrey Epstein's associates. Now, let me give you some context here because this matters. When Epstein was arrested in 2019, investigators seized an enormous amount of material from his properties: hard drives, photographs, documents, videos, physical records, financial statements. The amount of evidence collected was, by multiple accounts, staggering. And for years, victims' advocates, journalists, and members of Congress have been asking one question: where did all of that evidence go? Who is in it? What has been done with it? And the answer they keep getting, in different forms from different officials at different hearings, is the same answer Patel gave Lieu. You do not get to know. Some of this will never be public. But here is what Lieu did next that completely changed the dynamic in that room. He pulled out a document. Not a leaked document, not something anonymous, a document that had been obtained through a formal congressional records request, a document that the Department of Justice had provided to the committee with heavy redactions. And Lieu held it up and said, "This document, which your department provided to this committee, references 47 individuals by coded designation, not by name, by code. And the notation next to each code says the same thing: investigative action suspended. Reason, executive directive." He set the document down. "Mr. Patel, who issued that directive?" Patel said, "I cannot speak to specific internal decisions in this setting." Lieu said, "Can you speak to it in any setting?" Patel said, "Some materials will never be public." The room went quiet. Not the polite quiet of people waiting for the next question, the kind of quiet that happens when something real just landed. Because what Patel just said in the clearest possible terms is that there are decisions being made at the highest level of the American government about what the public will and will not ever know about Jeffrey Epstein's network. And those decisions are not being made by courts. They are not being made by independent counsels. They are being made by the executive branch, by the White House, by the same administration that promised loudly and repeatedly to release everything. Let's talk about those 47 names for a moment, because even without knowing who they are, the categories tell you everything. Congressional investigators who have reviewed portions of the unredacted materials have described the list as including individuals from finance, from politics, from media, from foreign governments, and from law enforcement itself. Multiple categories, multiple sectors, multiple countries. This was not a list of fringe figures on the edges of Epstein's world. These were people at the center of powerful institutions, and someone has decided that none of them will face investigative scrutiny. Not because the evidence is insufficient, not because the law doesn't apply, but because the executive branch said so.
Now, Lieu pressed further. He asked Patel whether any of the 47 individuals on this list had been interviewed by the FBI since Epstein's death in 2019. Patel said he could not confirm or deny specific investigative activities. Lieu said, "Can you tell me whether any of them have been interviewed in the last 6 months since you became FBI director?" Another pause, another look at his team, and then Patel said, "I am not in a position to characterize the scope of ongoing review." Lieu said, "That is not an answer." Patel said, "It is the answer I am able to provide." Lieu leaned back, looked at the camera, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation cannot tell Congress whether any of the 47 individuals connected to Jeffrey Epstein's criminal network have been interviewed in the last 6 months. Think about what that means." Think about what that means. Those were Lieu's words, but they are the right words. Because here is the reality. If those 47 people had been interviewed, Patel could have said so without revealing classified information. The simple fact of whether interviews occurred is not itself a state secret. The fact that he refused to confirm it, the fact that he hid behind procedural language instead of just saying, "Yes, interviews are happening, the process is ongoing, trust the system," the fact that he could not even say that tells you something. It tells you that either no investigative action has been taken, or that the investigative action that has been taken is not designed to expose these individuals, but to protect them. And then Lieu asked the question that ended the exchange. He said, "Mr. Patel, do you believe the American public has a right to know who Jeffrey Epstein's associates are?" Patel said, "I believe in the rule of law and in appropriate legal processes for disclosure." Lieu said, "That is not what I asked. Do you, Kash Patel, believe the American people have a right to know?" Patel looked at him for a long moment, and then he said, "Some materials will never be public." He said it again, the same words, like he had been coached to say exactly that and nothing more. Some materials will never be public. Not some materials cannot currently be discussed, not some materials are under active legal review. Some materials will never be public. Permanent concealment, official policy, announced out loud in a congressional hearing with cameras rolling, and nobody in the executive branch even bothered to walk it back afterward. Here is what makes this hearing different from all the other Epstein hearings we have seen over the past several months. Most of the time, officials dodge, deflect, run out the clock, give non-answers that are technically responsive without actually saying anything. Patel did something different. He confirmed the existence of protected materials. He confirmed that executive branch decisions are driving what gets disclosed, and he said twice on the record that some of this will never come out. That is not a dodge, that is a declaration, and it raises a question that no one in the mainstream media seems to want to ask out loud. If these materials contain information that is simply too legally sensitive or too connected to ongoing investigations, then the standard answer would be, "We cannot discuss this right now. Check back later. The process is ongoing." Officials say that all the time. They said it about January 6th. They said it about the Mueller investigation. They say it about everything. But Patel did not say that. He said never. And never is a very specific word. Never means someone has already decided this ends here. Someone has already looked at what is in those files and made a determination that the American public does not get to see it. Not next year, not after the next election, not after a court order. Never. So what do you do with that? What do you do when the director of the FBI sits in front of Congress and tells you that the government has made a permanent decision to keep secret the identities of people connected to one of the worst child exploitation networks in American history? You do what Ted Lieu did. You make him say it out loud. You make it part of the congressional record. You make sure there is a timestamp and a camera angle and a transcript that cannot be walked back. Because the one thing that cannot be made never public is the hearing itself. Patel said some materials will never be public, but this moment, this exchange, these words, they are already public, and now you have heard them. This hearing matters. What Patel said matters. The 47 names matter, even without knowing who they are, because the fact that they are being protected tells you everything about who has real power in this country and who they are using it to shield. If you think this conversation needs to keep going, if you think the American people deserve actual answers and not rehearsed deflections, drop a comment below and tell me what you think should happen next. Share this video, because the people in that hearing room are counting on this staying quiet. Make sure it does not. And if you want to stay updated as this story develops, subscribe right now, because the next hearing is already scheduled, and what comes out of it may be even bigger than this.